What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL Strategy Show. Closing out Week 14 with a little Monday Night Football showdown action. I'm Dave Loughran with you once again. Follow me on Twitter at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. And Matt Gajewski joining me for every single showdown show throughout the season. And we still got plenty more coming up all the way through Week 17. Matt, what's going on, brother?
Not too much, man. Excited for tonight's game. Looks like we're going to see some classic run-heavy football, my favorite.
And AB, you know him, Alex Brown. If you don't know Alex Brown by now, you're doing it wrong. If you didn't watch last week's show, you really missed out because we had a good time and someone, despite paying us, AB, for the insult, By the way, near decade-long defensive end for the Chicago Bears. So we're trying to bring a real legitimate NFL player on here. This man was in a Super Bowl. So who's better to break down offenses and defenses than AB? But yeah, AB, we got off the rails a little bit last week with that Terrell Suggs comp, and now we're talking about his former team.
Yes, we did. And I couldn't let that go, even though to make that comment, I just couldn't let it go. I couldn't agree with that.
I hear you. Yeah, we were just talking before the show began about this game and how crazy this Cleveland Browns team is. And AB, Matt was telling me, hey, they run 3 tight end sets, 20% of the time when Hooper was out in these previous 2 games. It is a strange Cleveland Browns team that is certainly going to look to run the football, and they're not even trying to hide it.
No, they're not. They wanna come out and establish the line of scrimmage. They try to win football games up front. They try to win from the offensive side. They want the offensive line to put pressure on you. They add big boys, more and more big boys on. I see the 6 and 7 D linemen or O linemen come in, or you see those big tight ends that come in that you don't even know them until they come off the sideline. You're like, wait a minute, I didn't know you were on the roster. Because they're blocked. That's it. That's all they're there for. Because when you got 2 running backs and Chubb and Hunt, then you're set, man. All you got to do is just turn around and makes life a lot easier on Baker Mayfield.
Matt, I said coming into the week 1, right? It was Cleveland and it was Baltimore. I said, I think Cleveland wins this game and they win the division. And Cleveland got smoked. And I look at it now and I say, you know what? I was just ahead of the curve. I got that wrong. I got the Carson Wentz benching wrong in the 1 week. And then the very next week, he was benched. So I'll take a semi-L and also kind of a win because this Cleveland team has played pretty good football. And while I think many people anticipate them losing today, they're field goal dogs at home, 45.5-point total. I do anticipate this being a pretty good game, even if it's maybe not the most exciting.
Cleveland's one of the weirdest teams to try to evaluate in all of the NFL, and I'm convinced of it. They're 9-3, a phenomenal record, very live to win this division if, there's still some struggles with Pittsburgh. But then you see them in recent weeks, they allow 25 points to the Jaguars. They allow 35 points to the Titans in what was one of the craziest shootouts last week. I was not fully expecting that. And, I just don't know what to make of this team at this point. Which Cleveland Brown shows up today? Do we get the team that allows 25 to the Jaguars, or do we get the team, that had played to a 9-3 record previously? I'm not entirely sure, but it's going to make it a fun DFS slate.
And what makes them even harder to evaluate? The fact that they played, and this is not an exaggeration, this team alone has played 3 of the worst weather games of the season. And all 3 of them came in succession. All 3 of them right in a row. Some really bad weather games where we saw just a ton of low-scoring performances. Look at it, Matt. They went against Philly. It was a 22-17 game, but horrible weather. Against Houston, 10-7, and Las Vegas, 16-6. So you look at that, you almost have to throw some of that out the window, at least from a Baker Mayfield passing game standpoint, because neither team passed, neither team could pass in those games.
Yeah, and if you look at Baker Mayfield in recent weeks, he has shown a little bit of prowess as a passer. And in those games, they flat out couldn't throw the ball. There were games where Baker Mayfield was attempting less than 20 passes in a game. You want to look to the Las Vegas game, 25 passes, the Houston game, 20 passes, the Philly game, 22 passes. And we know they're a run-first team, but even that is depressed for Baker Mayfield stat lines. He just had his first 300-yard passing game last week against Tennessee. They are going to throw the ball a little bit more maybe than their stats indicate. Those do, the run games that we're talking about, the weather games definitely do skew him a little bit.
We're happy to have all of you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you're just walking in the door. And if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel yet, we would love for you to do so. If you think somewhere along the way we helped you out, we maybe helped you make some lineup decisions that won you a bunch of money. Ultimately, it's your decision to make those lineups, to set them, to put the money in, of course. But if you like what we do, or you just like us, or you hate us, but we've helped you, either way, hit subscribe, help us get to 50K. And you know what? If you hate it, well, just click unsubscribe and you'll never have to see from us again. But I don't think you'll want to do that. AB, let's dive right into this one. We'll start with the Baltimore Ravens on the road. Again, 3-point favorites. And you mentioned right before we got started that you could see this game being one that just goes like this real quick, because both teams are going to look to run the ball and run the ball often. Where last week we saw the Dallas Cowboys allow 294 rushing yards to the Baltimore Ravens, whether it was Dobbins, whether it was Lamar Jackson, whether it was Gus Edwards, it didn't matter. They ran on them at will. Is this something you could see them capable of doing against the Browns defense that has shown market improvement throughout the year, but still is not a brick wall, so to speak, on the defensive line?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have to, if you go back and look at that first game, I mean, that game got out of hand pretty quickly.
Yeah.
When you get 2-3 possessions down, now you're out of your comfort zone for Cleveland. They got to start throwing the ball around, and that their defense is going to have to play really well early on so they can stay in this game. Then I do see it as being a very short game because both teams want to run it. They want to pound the ball. They want to control the line of scrimmage. And that first game, I think that's sitting in the back of Cleveland's mind, and it's definitely in Baltimore's mind. Baltimore's coming into this game. They think they expect to win. I think Cleveland's hoping to win, and we'll see what happens. But Cleveland will need Baker Mayfield not throwing the ball. Doesn't really bother me. I mean, we look back, just look at San Francisco. They paid all that money for Garoppolo, and then the NFC Championship game, they ran the ball. I think he threw the ball 10 or 11 times. They don't care. I think they found a formula what they believe that they can win with, and they're going to go with it. So if Baker if it calls for Baker to throw it, people got 9-10 people in the box, which I don't think Baltimore will do, then I think they'll throw it and use Baker. But other than that, they're trying to run the football.
Yeah, and Matt, Baltimore wants to do the same thing, right? You had the only issue here, of course, is what is the allocation of opportunities going to look like? Last week, Dobbins played 38%, Edwards played 33%, Ingram played 20%, Justice Hill played 11%. Starting it off with Baltimore's run game, where are you going, and are there any spots that you feel confident in?
Well, I think Justice Hill is going to be playing for the Dallas Renegades next year after he fumbled on one of those 6 snaps and immediately got pulled from the game. So I don't think we'll see any Justice Hill. And I still think it's Dobbins as the lead back in the committee. He does lead the group in touches. Again, in the last 2 games he's played, he, of course, missed the one due to the COVID protocols. He's led the backfield, and it's not just in raw carries, too. I know Lamar Jackson doesn't exactly pass to running backs a lot, but when he does, J.K. Dobbins is the preferred pass-catching back as well. Slight edge in snaps for him, too. So Dobbins, I think, is the main guy in this backfield.
He had 5 looks inside the red zone last week, too, which I think we should be pretty encouraged by. AB, what do you think about this backfield, just given the carousel of options they have and can go to any given week? Although it does feel like Matt pointed out, J.K. Dobbins does appear as the young rookie, Mark Ingram on the last year of his contract. It appears that J.K. Dobbins could be at least taking over more of the majority of work going forward. How do you see it play out?
I definitely like Dobbins in this game. In the first game, it was Dobbins. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns in the first game. So the first game against Cleveland. So, and that was early on before he had really established himself like he has established himself now. So I think it's him. I think he'll be the guy out of the backfield. Although you can get Edwards to break off a big run like we saw last week. Edwards can break off those big runs, but Dobbins is going to get the most carries. So if he can break off a long one and get a touchdown, then I think he could be the guy. But depending on how you think this game's going to go, if Cleveland wins, then it will be Nick Chubb, right? So that's what it'll be. But if we're talking about the Ravens, if the Ravens win this, then Dobbins will have a lot to do with it. He and obviously Lamar Jackson.
What do you think if you had to say, Matt, let me put it to you this way, put things in context, because we could talk about this all day long, but if we don't kind of get into the salaries and the numbers a little bit, we're not doing anyone any favors. The price point on J.K. Dobbins isn't exactly cheap, right? He is still relatively expensive. You're paying $8,200 for him in what has been a committee all season long. Gus Edwards, if you wanted to play him in the utilities, $5,200, and Mark Ingram is $2,800 because his opportunities have been weaning by the day, or dwindling by the day. So when it comes to the salaries here, just specifically on DraftKings right now, does any of them stand out to you more than the other?
Honestly, I think they're all appropriately priced. And I do think we need to consider Lamar Jackson's rushing upside in the situation too. Not necessarily for himself, but he will siphon carries away from some of these backs. It's why we don't really see a true ceiling. So as far as J.K. Dobbins, Mark Ingram, and Gus Edwards, they're more GPP plays to me because of their prices. J.K. Dobbins, you're paying for the red zone role. You're paying for a slight edge in opportunities. And then with Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards has been the better back of the two, but he still isn't significantly ahead of Mark Ingram in opportunities. Mark Ingram, of course, still coming off the injury. Last week, he carried the ball 7 times. So did Gus Edwards. So, I mean, at that price point, why not just pay down for Ingram?
And, AB, we talk about a timeshare, but we haven't even discussed their best runner yet. And that's Lamar Jackson. Last week, I know you had some concerns that maybe those linebackers in Dallas would be able to slow him down, but it seems like they just gave up. What a strange game that was. 13 for 94 and a touchdown. Is Lamar Jackson just one of these guys tonight that we feel like, or you feel like we need to lock in? And how do you think he fares against this Cleveland defense?
Man, I do. I mean, with him getting Andrews back, I think everything's going to open up for him. The Dallas let me down. They let me down. I thought they'd play a little tougher against him, and I don't have that same confidence in this Cleveland defense. So I think it's Lamar Jackson. I think whatever the chalk is, I mean, you don't put him there. I think you're doing yourself you're not doing yourself a favor, because he is going to be the guy. If this team goes off and score, whatever they score, he'll be a part of it. So Lamar Jackson is the guy for me. And then you try to get different somewhere else. I think a lot of people want Lamar Jackson and then maybe Nick Chubb, but that's going to eat up a lot of salary. If you put Lamar Jackson in that captain spot, man, he's 17-7 right now. So that's tough. That's a lot. You don't have much left to sprinkle around and get some quality guys in there. So going with him and then going with Dobbins, that might be a stretch. Maybe putting Gus Edwards in there, because I know that Gus Edwards and Ingram are getting around the same carries, but if you're watching the game, you see that Gus Edwards is way more explosive than Ingram, and he could take 160. And I don't see that in Mark Ingram.
Yeah, and Matt, Lamar Jackson, AB just mentioned, if you put Lamar Jackson at the captain spot and then you play Nick Chubb, right? Because I think we'd agree we're going to want some pieces of that Cleveland run game for sure, especially against a very good Ravens secondary that might once again see them not even funnel everything to the run. Plan on doing that, because that's what they do every single week. Even when they got smoked in week 1, Hunt and Chubb combined for 23 carries. So we'll get there, but that gives you $5,500 per player remaining to get 4 more guys into your lineup. So yes, it certainly is going to make things a little bit difficult. We can talk about some punts in a little bit, but ultimately, what are you doing with Lamar Jackson, and how does it affect the rest of your lineup?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson's ownership, especially in the captain slot, is double any other player, nearly double. So he's a tough guy to get to, especially if he doesn't hit his ceiling as a rusher. He's been unlikely to do it as a passer all year, as we've seen. He's really struggled in that facet of the game. So I do think you can get away from him and get contrarian with other captains in this spot. The Ravens runners are difficult to get to because of the timeshare. In large field tournaments, I do think they make a lot of sense in captain. But if you just want a condensed opportunity share, looking at the Cleveland backs are going to bring you a lot less ownership, and that's a more concentrated opportunity share. So I think the likelihood and ownership combined is a better situation for the captain slot than Lamar.
Okay. Is it feasible at all not to have Lamar in your lineups? Like, do you see this playing out in any way where it could work without Lamar? And of course, look, we have a tool, the top plays tool on Awesemo. It gives you it's just a straight probabilities tool and shows you like, what is the probability that Lamar Jackson ends up being the number one player? What is the probability that he ends up being one of the top 6 players, because you have to play 6 players. So you can actually get those numbers straight from the site. But I'm just curious to know where you stand on somebody like that, just given his insane upside with his legs. Right now, he has a 25% chance of being the top player. That is easily the highest on this slate, and it's not even close. I'm sorry. Whoa, 36%. And then 48.4%. Either 2 through 6. So that says a lot.
Yeah, so just start doing like the mental math in your head. Who on Baltimore can outscore him? Well, any of the pass catchers, if they outscore Lamar, he likely had something to do with it and probably ends up in the optimal lineup too. Like if Marquise Brown's the best captain, Lamar Jackson is the avenue that brought that success. And in the run game, you're dealing with 3 runners splitting the workload with Lamar Jackson. So what are the chances that, a couple of them outscore Lamar along with, a couple of Cleveland Browns? He'll be in all of my lineups that are in smaller fields, maybe less than 100,000. I think you'll really need to be contrarian in those large field tournaments, and it could be viable, but even then, I'm probably just going to eat the Lamar Jackson ownership. It doesn't have to be in captain. You can play him in utility and then try to get different elsewhere because he is such a crucial part of this Baltimore offense in the run game and the pass game.
Are there any pass catchers here, AB? And I know it's a 1-game slate, so we're definitely we're going to be coming up with something here. But any pass catchers for Baltimore that you feel comfortable going to and pairing with Lamar Jackson? Because you said you think it'll be a game where we see a lot of rushing, and I don't think anyone in the right mind would disagree with that. But Cleveland is going to be without Denzel Ward, who is having a pretty strong season. Maybe that makes a difference. Hard to say. What do you think about these pass catchers at wide receiver and tight end now that we get Mark Andrews back for the Ravens?
I think you hit it on the head right there. I mean, it's Mark Andrews. When you're talking about a team that loves to run the ball, or both teams that love to run the ball, then play action comes off of that if they're having success. And that play action typically goes to big possession receivers, or they try to push a ball deep down the field. I'm going to go with Andrews on this. I think Andrews will be the beneficiary on this. Maybe Snead. And then I just Brown, I guess you can see him getting a couple long targets because the safeties have sucked up trying to stop the run at Baltimore, and you can maybe pop one over the top of them. So I can definitely see that happening. I just don't see where a guy's going to have any receiver outside of Andrews is going to have more than 5-6 actual receptions in this game. So I think it'll be a run first and then play action going to the tight ends and stuff like that.
Yeah, no question. And I mentioned last week, Matt, maybe Lamar Jackson throws 17 times and do 17 times. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. But based off what AB said, if you look at the props on DK Sportsbook, Baker Mayfield has a pass completion prop of 18.5. It's juiced to the over. It's minus 125, but still 18.5. And a passing yards prop of, I think, 224, while Lamar Jackson's passing prop is just above 200, and his pass completion prop is also juiced to the over, but 17.5. So there's not a lot of meat on the bone here when you're talking about the pass catchers for both of these teams. Jarvis Landry is the only pass catcher on this slate that has a passing or receiving yards prop north of 44.5 yards. Just to set the table for you, you look at Vegas, there's no way they anticipate this being a high scoring game. It can shoot out, crazy things can happen, understand that. But that would not suggest we're looking at a lot of aerial attack from either side.
No, I don't think we will see a pass first approach from either team, but one of these teams has to win this game. And if there's a team trailing, they will be forced to throw more. I mean, it's completely neglecting like these coordinators, what they do in negative game script. Like Alex Van Pelt, he's not a complete dummy. Like in games where Cleveland has been trailing, Baker Mayfield's thrown a lot. When they played Baltimore in week 1, he threw 39 times. Last week, he threw 33 times. In a game against Indianapolis that finished with a 32-23 total, he threw 37 times. So it's not like even when they're down in games like Baker Mayfield's just not going to throw the ball. Cleveland's 9-3. If they get a negative game script, which I think could be a strong avenue to GPP success, like everyone thinks, oh, these teams want to run. Both teams want to run. Well, if a team gets down in the game, you can't just run the clock out. Like this isn't Jay Gruden coordinating the Browns. Like they're going to throw the ball if they're losing.
Sure. Yeah, Baker threw 39 times in week 1 against them. Again, they still had 23 combined rushes between their running backs, but he threw 39 times because they were forced to throw. They got their dicks kicked in from the first minute of this game. So ultimately, you can't look at this and say this can't happen. It can happen. Every single week, AB, we see scenarios where a team is very likely to be in a just back and forth match where nobody can push it past the 50-yard line. And then boom, 5 minutes into the game, they're down 21-0. As a matter of fact, Cleveland handed Tennessee one of those games just the other week where they were up, 21-0, 10 minutes into the game. So crazy things have and will happen. That's not the likelihood today. That's not what should happen or is expected to happen, but it could happen. And that's why, for those of you guys wondering, it's why we always will talk about certain plays, even if they're not, even if the likelihood or the probability of them going off isn't high, because weird things in football will happen. AB, if I asked you, who are your favorite options from Baltimore, salary considered, everything considered, who would you say your top guys are that you'd want to plug into a lineup first?
Well, I actually like going the Lamar Jackson in the captain spot this week. And if I'm gonna do that, because I do want to have Nick Chubb, because if this game stays close, I think Nick Chubb will get a lot of that run. Then I would probably go with Gus Edwards and hope that I can get the same amount. I mean, 8 to 10 carries, but he busts one. Like he goes. I mean, we saw him last week. I think he had 2 carries for over 20 yards. Really bust one and score a long touchdown. I think that's definitely within his capabilities. So I like Lamar Jackson, Nick Chubb, and then Gus Edwards. I love those guys, and that's who I'll be kind of building my lineups around tonight.
Same question to you, Matt.
For the Ravens, I think, in large field tournaments, I do think I want to get contrarian with some of the pass catchers. I agree with everything AB said. You definitely want Lamar Jackson. He just has the highest upside, and it's not even really close. But again, one of these teams is going to have to trail in this game. One of these teams is going to lose. Lamar Jackson, in losses, he's also thrown the ball a lot too. Like the New England game stands out where he throws 39 times, against Tennessee 29 times. It hasn't been efficient, but if Lamar Jackson is forced to throw, getting a contrarian approach and maybe looking at someone like Mark Andrews, who AB also highlighted as a mismatch for this team, in tournaments, that's a strategy I really like.
So could you see going with a situation where you have like Lamar Jackson captain and 2 Baltimore pass catchers, or maybe Mark Andrews captain and then Lamar Jackson in the utility with another Baltimore pass catcher, just playing that angle that if this game does happen to shoot out, or Cleveland, who's playing really great football right now, ends up going up early, you could see Lamar Jackson forced to throw and not a lot of people, and just completely avoiding the ground game, you completely avoiding the running backs for Baltimore in certain lineups.
Yeah, you could do that. And like AB said, I don't even hate throwing Gus Edwards into the mix because of price. If you take like a cheap Baltimore running back and then you also have Lamar in the pass game, you're probably running like a 4-2 or a 5-1 stack in favor of Baltimore, assuming they win that game. But it's viable because I don't think it would work with Dobbins. But if you use Gus Edwards or Mark Ingram, the prices are there. You can do that.
And you should check out the short, like 7-minute videos that Josh Engelman does for Showdown sites. He does one for FanDuel and for DraftKings, and he'll give you his simulation results, which are really helpful. Just giving you how often does this happen? How often does this happen? what is, after running this many simulations, what was the optimal ratio between Baltimore and Cleveland players, all of that stuff. It's cool. So check that out as well. It won't take up much of your day either. And by the way, guys, for $1, you can get all of our NBA content all the way through December 29th. I'm not saying you can use this through December 29th. What I'm saying is if you were to use it today on the 14th, you'd have all of our NBA content through December 29th for $1 single. All you have to do is use the promo code Caruso, CARUSO at checkout, awesemo.com/join when you get our premium when you get our premium NBA package. So you get all of the preseason content for $1. And for that same dollar, you also get the first week of the NBA season, regular season. I'm talking everything, all access, projections, ownership, Boomer Bust Tool, lineup builder, all of the amazing premium articles, anything on the site outside of Fantasy Cruncher, because, well, we host them to our site. We can't give you discounts on that. Plus, it's an insane product. You want that if you're going to check it out. All of it for $1 all the way through the 29th. So get in on that today. That's 15 days for $1, including the first week of the NBA season. It's Caruso at checkout. If you have any questions, you can hit me up on Twitter as well and DM me. By the way, follow AB at Alex Brown 96. Right, I got that wrong last time, but we're good now. And Matt _Gajewski. Just hop over there and give them a follow, and go to Awesemo_com. Check out the giveaway. All you have to do is guess who has more passing yards, Lamar Jackson or Baker Mayfield tonight. Actually, a pretty tough question. A random winner among the correct answers is going to get a free full year of Awesemo Plus NFL, all access NFL for an entire calendar year. So check that out. All right, I'm done. AB, let's jump over to you. Start with Cleveland. Let's go straight to the running backs here. I'm going to let you just dive right into it because they want to run, and we've pretty much said that a lot already throughout this show.
Yes, I mean, and it starts with Nick Chubb. I mean, I think he pretty much solidified it. When he went out and Kareem Hunt took over, I actually thought because Kareem Hunt is more explosive, and he showed that when he was in Kansas City, I thought that he would take over that spot. And that's not the case. I mean, Nick Chubb is just an animal. I mean, he's not going to truly like break 190 and take it the distance, but he is that guy that's going to get 20, 25 carries, and he's going to carry this team. Assuming,
he's so good.
Right, he's so good. But then Kareem Hunt comes in after he's like just pounded on the defense, and now he's a little quicker, so he hits the hole a little quicker, and teams aren't ready for that. So sometimes you can get those games where even though Nick Chubb has the more carries, you got Kareem Hunt in there with 12 carries, but he has 88 yards and he scored a touchdown. So this is run first. If you're looking at Cleveland, then you're definitely looking at their running backs. And I like what Matt's talking about as far as if you believe this game's going to get out of hand like it did the first game. Like by halftime, that game was 3 possessions. Cleveland was 3 possessions down. So in that particular game script, then yes, you got to look at Baker Mayfield and him throwing the ball. I think the defense is playing better now. I don't think the game gets out of hand. So at no point do I think it gets more than 2 possessions, so like 10 points. So I don't think it forces Cleveland to throw it or forces Baltimore to throw it. So I think it will be a run-first game, and the running backs will play a big part tonight.
No question. And Matt, I would urge anyone watching the show to go look at Nick Chubb's play-by-play, like by each play, each time he touches the ball by game, and look at one very easily identifying factor that AB just touched on. They wear teams down with the ground game. Go look at all of his biggest runs from the season. Almost every single run from Nick Chubb that was for 20-plus yards is in the second half. And the big ones, the 50-plus yard runs, almost all of them have been in the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter against Philadelphia, 54 yards. Against Houston, 59 yards late in the fourth quarter. Just go on and on and on. It's crazy to see how they wear down opposing defenses. And if the game is close, or if they're playing in a favorable game script with the lead, you don't want to be on the opposite end of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb late in the game in the fourth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think you could say the same thing for the Ravens, and that's why this is such an interesting GPP slate. again, not to just harp on this, but I don't think both teams can play run first the whole time. Even if it's a 10-point deficit that one of these teams is in, like, is Cleveland just going to run 3 plays in a row if they're down by 10? I would argue no. Is Baltimore? I would argue no. And we've seen this. If you go back and look at some of the games they've played, the New England game against Baltimore, there was a 6-point deficit. That's what the margin of victory was for New England. Lamar Jackson threw 34 times in that game. It's not like when they're down, they can just continue to ride the run. And it doesn't have to be a 3-touchdown game. We see this in negative game script. But if one of these teams is up and whoever you project that to be, I think building your lineups around that will be crucial. If you think Cleveland's winning this game, I think it's probably fairly likely that one of the runners is an optimal captain, or at least in the optimal lineup.
Right. Let me stick with you here for a second, Matt. When we discussed the idea of them being in the optimal or being the captain in the optimal lineup, the probability that these guys finish as the number one scorer, Lamar Jackson, like I said, it's not even remotely close. And by the way, for $3.95 a week, you can get all of our Showdown content in the NFL Express package, rankings included for the main slate and Express lineup builder, Express top stack tool. I won't get into it all, but all of our Showdown content is now included for less than $4 a week. And they're amazing tools built by the number one DFS player in the world. And he uses them to win a lot of money himself. But Lamar Jackson, just so you know where I'm coming from when I read these numbers off, in the top plays tool, 36% top player probability. Nick Chubb is second at 13%, but he also has a 31% chance of being in the optimal, you could say, 2 through 6. But Kareem Hunt is fourth in both captain or top performer and fourth in 2 through 6. So just being in the optimal in general, that just goes to show you what you're dealing with this team when both running backs, even in a 1-game slate, have that high a probability of being some of the top scorers or one of the top scorers or the top scorer on the entire game.
Honestly, like, if you think Cleveland is up by a score or two in this game, how crazy is it to play Chubb and Hunt in the same lineup and just ignore the rest of Cleveland? I honestly don't think it's that crazy. If you look back at their recent games, like Chubb, 19 touches last week. Kareem Hunt, 17 touches last week. The week prior, 22 touches for Chubb, 10 for Hunt. That's a lot of opportunity just condensed in the Cleveland backfield. I do think it is contingent on them winning this game, and I think they'd have to play through a lead throughout for that ceiling to be realized. But it's something that definitely could happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, they could get, we've seen them easily go 30 plus or almost 40 combined touches in certain games. AB, the passing game hasn't been as stellar, but like we said, they played in some bad weather spots. And then last week, Baker Mayfield erupted for 334 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 25 of 33 passing. He was stellar. Do you see any possibility against this Baltimore Ravens secondary that has been pretty? I mean, Marlon Humphrey leads the league in forced fumbles this season with, I think, 6. I won't even get into it. They are a good secondary. You mentioned last week when we talked about the Dallas game that they're so good at stripping the ball. Should we be concerned about Baker Mayfield today?
I think you have to think about how Baltimore's going to come in and try to stop this Cleveland offense. So if they're going to come in and they believe they're going to try to run the ball, which everybody really thinks they're going to try to run the ball, and if they have success, they're going to have to run the ball. Can Baltimore stop their run game with 7-man front? Can they stop it with an 8-man front? So if they can stop it with a 7-man front, then Baker Mayfield's not going to be like this game will get out of hand pretty quickly. The only way Baker can really get going is if they're putting 8 people in the box and sneaking down a 9th guy or something like that. Now he has those windows of one-on-one because Baker isn't the most accurate guy. So it's hard for him to fit balls into small windows. But if he can throw the ball up and his guys can go make plays, I mean, we're all talking about NFL receivers here. So I think Landry can make plays going across the field. And if you find them, if you catch them in man, which Baltimore will run, if you catch them in man and you have those crossing routes, guy gets knocked off, you can knock off a 40-yard pass play just by a little 8-yard route, you know? So like those, I think that's how you got to really think about the game. And Matt mentioned, New England. And New England, well, they're a little different because you know how Belichick is, and he's going to come in and he's going to take away what you do best. He's going to make you do something else. So in that particular game script, he doesn't want Lamar Jackson to run. So he wants to take that away from him, so it forces him to pass. So in this game script, will Baltimore come out and force Baker Mayfield to beat him and put 8 men in the box? So I mean, it's just there's a lot of chess pieces moving, and I think they'll come out and they'll try to stop the run to make Baker Mayfield beat them.
All right, Matt. Let's stay on that for a second. Is this something that you could see playing out as well? And if it does, how do you attack the passing game?
The passing game, man. Again, I think you just want to think about when you're building your lineups, which team do you think is going to win this game? And like in chat, everyone's going back and forth on the team they think wins this game. I don't think you're going to really get an edge in ownership by picking one side or the other. But if you just play the passing game on either side, I do think it will give you a little bit of an edge on everyone trying to stack the run games. I don't have a strong preference between the passing games between these two teams, if it makes sense.
All right. Well, what do you think if we get into the specifics a little bit here? What are your thoughts on Jarvis Landry, who, I mean, I know you don't care too much about cornerback matchups, understandably so, but he's going to see a lot of Marlon Humphrey. The outside corners on this team are also good. It could be a little bit of a tough time here. And then with Austin Hooper unlikely to play, you're going to see Harrison Bryant and David Njoku again on a team that runs an insane amount of 12 personnel. I think we looked over it before the show, and I think we concluded that last game they had, what did we say? They ran 2 plays without 12 personnel. I think that's what we said. Yeah. So given that, like, what should we be doing with the tight end position, and what should we be doing with the receivers as well?
Yeah, so you bring up wide receiver cornerback matchups. It's not that I don't care about them. They're more just tiebreakers for me. I'll look to volume first and foremost. The thing with Landry today, even if Marlon Humphrey wasn't on him, where would he get an easy matchup? All of Baltimore's corners are stout. So I don't think Marlon Humphrey stands out above any of, like Jimmy Smith is questionable, but the Baltimore secondary is phenomenal. As far as the tight ends go, you mentioned it. They're using 12 personnel at one of the highest rates in the league. You and I were joking before the show, they used 3 tight ends more than any other team. And when we isolated the games where Hooper missed, they still used 3 tight ends on nearly 20% of their snaps. So you are going to see a ton of Harrison Bryant. You're going to see a ton of David Njoku. And they're already on the field a fairly decent amount heading into this game with Austin Hooper in the mix. Looking at someone like Njoku, who's near the stone minimum on this slate, he's going to play a lot today.
Yeah, he is. AB, I was just thinking about this now. Do you think that one of the reasons Cleveland was able to come out and blow the doors off Tennessee through the air early on was because Tennessee defensively came into this game with the sole idea of being able to contain them on the ground?
Yes, you have to almost pick your poison here. You gotta. Right. Which do you want? I mean, you want Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb to just kill you on the ground, or do you want to stop that and make Baker Mayfield beat you? I mean, I think if you're rolling the dice, then you got before that game. I mean, you got to make Baker Mayfield beat you, and I think that's what Baltimore wants to do. But it's interesting because if they come out in 12 personnel, or they come out in 3 tight ends, then Baltimore can't run out all those corners because they're going to be in trouble. You got a tight end block in a corner. So they're going to have to do something different to maybe get another linebacker on the field or another safety on the field, which, I mean, now you pull one of those really good defensive backs off the field. So I think there's going to be a lot of chess pieces moving, and 12 personnel is serious, especially if they get going downhill. I think Baltimore could be in trouble if they're running out those really good corners that really aren't run stoppers.
Would you captain spot Baker Mayfield in any scenario?
No, I wouldn't.
What about you, Matt?
I think you could, but it's not so much because of his talent. I think it's more of an ownership play in large field tournaments. We know what Cleveland
captain
wants.
Spot ownership right now is 12%, so half of that of Lamar Jackson, for good reason, but it's the same as Nick Chubb, half of Lamar Jackson. Go ahead.
Yeah, still a little bit low for just a quarterback overall, considering where we typically see quarterbacks on these slates. And like I mentioned, it's not a talent or a game script thing like what Cleveland wants to do is run, but in the event they're down and Baker has to throw, I think he's a contrarian captain. Given that it's 12%, it's just typically we see quarterbacks a little bit higher.
Matt,
All right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Even if it's a let's say the game script is like the first game where he has to throw the ball, I still don't think he could be successful throwing the ball against Baltimore. So that's why I say it. I just don't think, I mean, what is he going to throw for? If they're down by 3 touchdowns, I don't believe he can throw 3 touchdowns against this defense. No, that's why I wouldn't do it. But
how much interest would you have in Baltimore? Go ahead, Matt. I was going to talk about the defense, but we'll do that to wrap the show up. Matt, go ahead and respond to that.
No, I don't want it to seem like I think Baker Mayfield's an optimal captain. I think for what you just said, if Cleveland is down in this game, I think there's probably a chance Baker Mayfield had something to do with that. Like throwing some interceptions, some turnovers, which obviously wouldn't be good to his stat line. It would strictly be, a Millie Maker type situation where I think his ownership is too low typically compared to where we see normal quarterbacks. I don't think Baker Mayfield himself is a fantastic play, if that makes sense.
Yep, gotcha.
AB, would you look towards Baltimore defense in this game? Because it's tough to play defenses against the team that's going to run so much, because you'd like to get some pick sixes and interceptions, and you would like to get some sacks as well. But if you think that it could develop into a spot where Baker Mayfield's forced to throw and he can't throw well against Baltimore, their defense has to stand out to you as at least a decent option, right?
Yeah, I think so. If you believe they can, which I don't think so. I don't think that Baltimore's going to get that lead like they got in the first time, because I think Cleveland's defense is playing a lot better right now. But I do believe if Baltimore does get a lead, I think it gets worse for Cleveland when they have to do something they're not comfortable doing, and that's throwing the ball 35 times a game. I mean, I watch it every week with the Bears. I mean, every time they have to throw the ball 35 times, they're in trouble. So you don't want Baker throwing the ball that much. If so, it's just not that he can't be successful. It's just not probable. It's not a highly likely scenario for the Cleveland Browns if they're going to win.
Matt, talk to me a little bit here before we wrap things up. And again, appreciate you guys being with us all the time. These are free shows and we love doing it, and we love having you guys help support us here on the channel. The one way you can do that is, continue to hit the thumbs up if you appreciate and enjoy this content, and subscribe to the channel. And the one crazy thing, Matt, now is without Austin Hooper, with him, I don't think is he officially out yet? I know they said they were going to play it by ear throughout the day.
You got like some of those reports from the sideline reporter saying he's unlikely to play.
Unlikely.
So unlikely.
Right. That's what I saw as well. How willing are you to get to Harrison Bryant or David Njoku? Just one, because I think this could be a spot that goes a little bit overlooked, and I want to hammer this home, just given the lack of value options across the board today.
Yeah, I'm going to play a lot of these guys, and I don't think with Harrison Bryant and David Njoku, the game script necessarily matters as much because they're cheap. Right. They already played a significant number of snaps. Last week with Austin Hooper, Harrison Bryant played 39 snaps out of 72. David Njoku played 30 out of 72. They even used Steven Carlson. He's purely a blocker, but he's just a fourth tight end. He played a few snaps. And now we remove Austin Hooper from the picture. And I know before the show, you and I tried to isolate the games without Hooper previously. And in those games, they still use 2 tight ends a majority of their snaps. And they use 3 tight ends on nearly 20%. So it's not like there's a significant talent drop off between Hooper to Njoku and Harrison Bryant. This team is using 12 personnel a majority of the time, regardless of Hooper's status.
I just realized too that our Awesemo's top showdown in single game plays, what we've been referencing throughout the show, these probabilities tool, it's awesome. It's free today. Single game plays for DraftKings and FanDuel. Yeah, so that's free on the site at awesemo.com. Check that out if you'd like to see what we're referencing and you haven't been over to Awesemo. And maybe you're not in the position right now to join the community. Here's a good way to jump in and see what we've got to offer. Of course, and the Caruso promo, but this is entirely free. All right, AB, let's close it out with this as we always do. Your final prediction, score, Baltimore laying 3 points on the road. What are you doing about that spread? And the total 45.5 points. A lot of times based on your decision or based on your answer will dictate how a lot of your lineups are going to look as well.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I think Cleveland keeps it close, and if Cleveland keeps it close, that means their defense is playing pretty well. I like the under on this one, and I do like Baltimore to cover. So I'll go with Baltimore and the under.
Okay, Baltimore and the under. So low scoring game here. What are you thinking? Like 24-20, or do we
like
get it?
21-16, something like that. 24 around that. That's what I see this game going. The touchdowns, there won't be plenty. They won't be plentiful. That's for sure. The touchdowns will be scarce.
All right, appreciate you, Legalized. 720 Red Dog. He's hanging out with us all the time in chat. Says Browns 20, Ravens 17. Matt, what do you say?
I like the Ravens. I like the under. I'm with AB in this.
All right. I'm going with a push. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But I do think this game's going to be really close, and I don't have a good read, honestly. Like Cleveland at home, they're playing really good football recently. Baltimore began to get everybody back. They're getting healthy. Side bets for football are very difficult, and we all know that. But I'm going to go Cleveland here. I think they have enough right now on both sides of the field to be able to make this a close enough game. If Baltimore wins, I think it'll be by marginally. And maybe this is one where you tease this game. I think that could make a lot of sense. But ultimately, I think the Browns stay very competitive. I'll take the points, 3 points with the Browns. But usually I'd like to bet the dog and the over. I still think this is going to be pretty low scoring as well. So I'll go Browns and the under. Guys, thanks for hanging out as always. Coming up is the Monday morning quarterback show with Adam Scher, Josh Ingram, and myself, breaking down everything from week 14 on Fantasy Cruncher lineup study. We can tell you all of the exposures that everybody had. We can tell you what ownership looked like, what their performance was, literally everything compared to all of these slates, the winners, the losers, what went right, what went wrong. It's really a great way to study what happened each week and apply that knowledge into the following week, and it's all entirely free. So final thoughts, AB, before we head out.
Don't miss out on Tucker. If you believe it's gonna be a low scoring game, if you believe it's gonna be a low scoring game, which I do, there will be some opportunities for Tucker to get some 40, 45-yard field goals in, because that means they're just not converting when they get down into the red zone. So keep Tucker in mind.
All right, I like that. I'm glad you pulled that up because I forgot. What about you, Matt? Final thoughts?
One thing that AB said that really stuck out to me was this matchup, the Cleveland tight ends against the Baltimore secondary. How does Baltimore respond with their personnel to Cleveland using 2, sometimes 3 tight ends? They can't have all these corners on the field without a major mismatch. And not a lot of teams run what Cleveland is going to put out there on offense. So I'm curious to see how this Baltimore team responds to it. That was a really good take, Alex. It's not something I thought about prior to the show.
All right, beautiful. Thanks, guys. Appreciate all of you. We'll see you back here soon. Thursday night. Do we have Thursday night football? I think we do.
Yeah, man, we do. We do.
All right, yeah. Beautiful. Next slate, anytime there's showdowns, you can find us 10 a.m. Eastern right here on the Awesemo YouTube channel. Follow AB at Alex Brown 96, Matt at Matt _Gajewski, myself at Lafayette_D, and of course, Awesemo at Awesemo_com. Thanks, Jordan Klein, for producing this one. As always, we'll see you back here soon, guys.